Hello and welcome back to Overwatch Champions. This series is sponsored and produced by BreakTheGame.net. For the latest in the news on all the biggest names and events in esports, head over to our website. My name is Odin, and in this episode, we're going to cover the basics of team composition. You might have seen the hero tips in the pick screen, suggesting you need a tank or a support. Well, mostly support. But let's talk about the elements of a good team composition. See, in most levels of play, you can play just about anything, but if you want to have the best chance of winning, it's worth learning what heroes excel in the current meta. In the future, we'll be covering major changes through patch analysis to keep you up to date on the overall meta, but the meta does evolve between patches as well. If you don't have time to follow all of the games played in the competitive scene, you can check out Planet Overwatch. I'll put a link in the description. A detailed weekly breakdown gives you the info you need to stay up to date. Since the meta is always shifting though, we can't just look at the current version, as that information will simply become outdated within a patch or two. Instead, we'll talk about the objective strengths of team composition and where the rules can come into play. On a side note, regarding our current meta, defense heroes are a little bit of a risky pickup and don't really see a lot of play at high levels, so be sure that you have a good reason to pick one up before you do. Widowmaker is a pretty good example of this. If the enemy team lacks a Reinhardt, she can still be a good choice in some areas, though due to heroes like Genji and Winston being pretty popular at the moment, she's mainly used for short windows on attack. First off, let's cover the basics of attack and defense. We're going to cover payload and assault maps first, since they generally have the same types of setups. On attack, most team compositions consist of 2 offense heroes, also known as DPS, 2 tanks, and 2 supports. This gives you a very well-rounded composition that is able to perform well in almost every situation. Your offense heroes provide high damage output and are the most likely to secure kills. Your tanks are able to break through choke points and open holes in the enemy's positioning with their high survivability and disruptive abilities, so having a 2-2 split gives you a lot of options on how to approach the objective. Supports, on the other hand, provide your team with much more than just healing. Lucio's speed boost and Zenyatta's Discord Orb provide a lot of utility, and their ultimates can turn the tide of a fight in an instant. It's very common to see 2 supports on an attacking team for the sheer staying power they provide, as these setups tend to be a bit stronger in situations where your spawn is further from the current objective. Attacking teams must rely on constant pressure to break the enemy line, so having 2 supports is generally a good idea in situations where the defending team spawns closer or at an equal distance to the attacking team. However, on maps like King's Row, where the attacking team actually has the spawn advantage, running a solo Lucio may be favorable to allow for a specialist like Widow or another DPS. Defending teams tend to favor a double support setup a little bit more heavily. Volskaya Industries is a great example of a map that heavily favors the attacking team's spawn, especially on the first point. As a result, it's important for the defending team to try to minimize casualties in a skirmish, so the attacking team has a harder time keeping up the pressure. Since offense is somewhat favored in general due to the nature of objectives, it becomes doubly important to ensure that you keep your team in the fight for as long as possible. You want to prevent situations where the attacking team is able to pick off stragglers running back from spawn, delaying your defense even further. King of the Hill, aka control maps, are a little bit of a different beast, namely due to the effectiveness of Lucio with his AoE healing and speed and his ultimate. It's not always necessary to run a double support setup on King of the Hill, especially on smaller points that have a lot of medpacks and the abundance of heroes with good sustainability like Tracer, Soldier, and Reaper. In general, it's a good idea to understand counterpicks for the enemy team if you're struggling to win fights. For example, on a normal setup with 2 offense, tanks, and supports, you might be running a Roadhog and Reinhardt on defense, but you have a McCree and Soldier 76 as your offense heroes, and they're unable to effectively deal with the backline from their position, such as pushing on Hollywood, where you're coming through a small choke point and have a lot of different angles to check. Knowing when to pick up a Genji, Winston, or Widowmaker in these types of situations can solve a problem preventing your team from being able to push. An important skill to have is the ability to gauge the enemy setup and strategize accordingly. Always have a reason to switch your hero and make good choices when picking up your hero at the start of the game. If your team has a Tracer, for instance, picking another flanking hero like Genji will severely hurt your ability to push a choke point, since your tanks can't rely on DPS to pressure the enemy, and your supports may become susceptible to enemy team flanks as well. In this situation, the enemy team has enough breathing room to effectively focus on you and prevent you from doing your job, and Genji can fall very quickly to focus fire. Talk to your team and make sure everyone is comfortable playing the heroes that they've selected and are able to switch if need be. If your Roadhog doesn't feel comfortable playing Zarya, ask if they'd like to switch roles. Doing so will greatly improve your chances of succeeding with your team. Remember, it's all about the teamwork. That's all for this episode. If you enjoyed the video and want to see more, hit that subscribe button and leave us a comment letting us know how we're doing and what you'd like to see in future videos. In our next episode, we'll begin to cover more advanced gameplay tips and information as we've touched on a lot of the core elements of the game so far. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Get out there and be the hammer.